Here we go. Let's get started. Hello, beautiful people. Hello. My name is Chioma. And today we're going to be talking about the inspiration behind my book. And so just a little bit of background for those that don't know me. I know most of you guys here, but for those that don't, I am a classical pianist and poet, and I currently work in music education. And so I'm actually located in Berlin right now. And I tell stories through my art, through my music, through my poetry. And and I am writing this book called Becoming Chi, The Journey to Self-Discovery. And so where did this inspiration come from? So let's rewind a little bit. I started writing poetry way in like middle school and high school, but I stopped for a little bit when I went to college because, honey, undergrad is time consuming. So I didn't continue writing my poetry, or I kind of halted my poetry when I got to college. And so I mainly focused on my music, right? And kind of building that craft in my music. And so I didn't go back to my poetry until after college. And how that started or how that came about was when I took a trip to Ghana. And that was my first time going to Ghana. And I went originally with my school to study African drumming and dancing, which was amazing experience. And if I could go every year, I would. And so that's when I started to write my poetry again and started, oh, thank you, Sarah, I love you. That's when I started writing my poetry again, because honestly, when I went to Ghana, I was literally surrounded by storytellers. And the beauty about that was it just is inspirational to be around people that had a story for everything, like there was a message behind everything we did. And for me, that was important, right? It was important for me to kind of be around people that had meaning, and that in everything they did, there was meaning. And so that's what inspired me to start journaling again, to start writing again. My first trip to Ghana, back in 2000, I want to say 2019. 2018. Welcome to those that are coming in. So I started writing again poetry and just journaling my experiences back in 2019. And that's also when I started traveling more, right? And so I started traveling more, and I just had this like appetite for just culture and life, and I was just inspired by my surroundings. So I even remember when I went to Cuba also in like I want to say 2000, I'm getting the dates mixed up, I think it was 2019. And I went to Cuba and I started writing poetry based on my travel experiences. And the beauty about that was that it was in real time, right? And so I started writing poetry literally based on maybe an event that happened the day before. And so when I went to Cuba and I was just around so much music and culture and just so many friendly people, that also kind of got me active in like writing again. And so I would start writing about, like when I went to Cuba specifically, I would like write a poem about my experience going into this cave, and there was just like this amazing water and spirit aspect to it. And so I would write about that. I would just write about how I enjoyed Cuba or whatever. So when I started traveling more, I started writing poetry based off of my traveling experiences. And to me, that just kind of ignited that passion and love for writing again and for poetry. And so I started documenting it on my Instagram. And that's when I started publicly writing my poetry, which was, on Instagram and on Facebook. And, I changed my name to Becoming Chi because I felt like the experiences that I was going through, whether it's through travel or whatever, just started to kind of shape me into this new person that was just hungry for change, hungry for culture and for experiences. And so I started sharing it. And I started getting some really positive feedback about my poetry. And I was like, okay, so people actually like to hear about what I have to say. That's cool. And so I just continued writing poetry, posting snippets of it, and journaling, traveling, writing poetry about that, posting it. And so it kind of became this regular pattern and this regular routine of having these experiences and then writing poetry about it. And I just remember about a summer ago is when I just started writing every day. Every day. This was before I even realized I was going to write a book. I just started writing every single day. And for me, it was freeing. It was freeing in a lot of ways. It just helped me to get my ideas out on paper, to physically see what my mind looks like, you know? And so that to me was powerful because no matter what I'm going through, I have that, right? As a blueprint, I have that there to look at if I'm ever going through anything. I can look back at those experiences and remember, kind of go down memory lane about the things I've gone through. And so that was kind of cool to see. And so it was really when the pandemic happened that I'm like, maybe I can make this into a book. And part of it, even leading up to that decision, was a lot of self-reflecting, like a lot of self-reflecting. And I would just literally be in my backyard. When I was back in New Jersey, I would just, I was thankful that I had this huge backyard. And so I would just go in my backyard and reflect and write and reflect some more and write. And so that kind of turned into me kind of gathering the courage to decide, I think I'm ready to share my story. And so that's what I did. I made that decision after, this is like days and days and days and days of being in quarantine, of just reflecting on my experiences. Hello to those that are coming in. Thank you, Gary. This, after just kind of reflecting on my experiences and just my writing and just writing also, just literally naturally, I would just write. I just get my book out and just start writing. And if it was a nice day, I'd go outside and write. So that's kind of what I did majority of the time when quarantine first happened and we kind of came out this pandemic, was I just wrote a lot and I reflected. And so after reflecting, just about myself and who I am and who I'm becoming, and also doing a lot of the inner work, on myself, and asking myself questions like who do I think, who am I? Right? Number one, but where do I see myself being in the next year, in the next 2 years? And so I reflected on my joy, I reflected on my pain, I reflected on my relationships with people, I reflected on my relationship with myself. I did a lot of reflecting during quarantine. And so I kind of just came to this place where I felt comfortable enough to share my story, like I was saying. And I was like, you know what? I'm really in a content place with who I'm becoming, that I want to share this story. And so for me, writing this book, I think I'm writing this book for myself, most importantly, but I'm also writing it to share my story, and if it inspires someone else to write their own story, even better. But I'm not writing this, like, the first thought that came to my mind was, I'm just ready to put my work out there. I was in a place in my life where I did not feel comfortable enough to share my story, where I did not feel comfortable enough to be who I am, to exist in this body. I just was really detached, if that makes sense. And so it took a long time to get here where I felt comfortable enough to just share parts of me. And so I'm doing that for my younger self that couldn't speak, that didn't have a voice, that didn't feel comfortable enough to express herself emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, in all aspects. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this for me, because you know why? Because I can. Because I'm in the position where I feel comfortable enough, where I have the power to speak up for myself, for others to hear my voice, and to kind of just speak my truth. And so yeah, that is kind of where it's coming from. And for those just tuning in, thank you, Brittany. For those just tuning in, yeah, like I said, this idea of me and the inspiration behind my book started with me just starting to write and traveling and going through these experiences and being around other storytellers. But then like I said, once this pandemic kind of came about, I love it. Once this pandemic kind of came about, I was like, after just reflecting on myself and the journey that I've been on and where I am in my life, I was just like, you know what? I'm just ready. I'm ready to tell my story. And so, yeah, to sum it up, the inspiration came from me being in a place where I just felt ready to share. And I mean, that's one part of it, right? I just felt ready to share, but also, yeah, I mean, there's so many people out here that feel the same way I feel, that feel like they were in a place where they couldn't share their story, were in a place where they couldn't be themselves, or they weren't allowed to be themselves. And so finally being in a position where I am allowed to do that, hell yeah, I'm gonna share it for anyone who's willing to listen. Absolutely. And even if no one's willing to listen, I'm willing to listen to myself. I think that's, if anything, the most important thing when you're going into something is that you're doing it for you first. And so that's kind of where I am. And then on top of that is when I also started reading more. So let's fast forward now. I've made the decision that I'm going to write this book, that I'm ready to share my story. I started doing research. I started reading other people's stories. I started reading authors that were just compelling and fascinating to me. And recently not recently per se, probably like a little bit before this year, started being inspired by authors who are living now, who are making amazing work and telling their stories. One of them being Amiri Leon, another one being Jasmine Mans, of course, and I kind of wrote this in one of my posts the other day. Another one being Amanda Gordon, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, right? All the greats to me. Thanks, Britt. I started reading about them and their lives and what inspired them, how they told their stories through their words, how they organized their words to tell their story. I mean, to me, it was so fascinating. And so I tried to dig into that, really, and just read as much as I possibly can about these artists, because they were artists that inspired my work, that inspired my poetry. And so that inspired me to just read other women, especially women of color, and read their work and, just hear their stories. Inspired me to be like, okay, I can do this. I can write my own as well and be just as profound, right? And so the good thing also about, I love this, so your travels, I'm going to get to that question too. I'm going to answer that, Gary. So please, if for some reason I don't bring it up in the next 10 minutes, ask that question again. Please, and those that have questions, please ask away. I want to hear from you and answer those questions. So yeah, I started going and diving into their work and kind of getting to know them and the stories that they brought and the journeys that they went on through their book. And, that inspired me also to just keep writing, even when I felt like not writing at all. That inspired me to just keep writing, even if it was only a stanza, even if it was only a word, to keep going. And so I did that, and I just tried to write as much as I can and did research. And, at some point I realized that okay, me actually writing is helping to improve my writing, which inspired me to continue writing because I realized my writing was getting better. And when I look at some of my poetry in the previous years and I look at my poetry now, I'm like, who was this person? It's like such a difference in my writing and just how I go about telling my stories. It's definitely grown, it's matured. And so I'm glad that I've taken this time to write. Aw, you guys are making me like blush. Okay. I will answer those questions in a second. So yeah, I realized that within that year, from when I started thinking that, when I decided I was going to write a book to now, I realized how different and how much my writing has grown, how much it's improved. Hello, beautiful people coming in. I realized how much it improved. And so, that encouraged me to keep going. And then when I started sharing my poetry, like I said, really inspired me that, people want to hear this. People want to hear this book. People want to hear about my life. And so, yeah, I'm just like really, 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 really encouraged by that. And so, yeah, like I said, I just kept writing and reading and, watched my writing mature and grow and all of that, a combination of all of that, a combination of also having support from my friends and my family that was like, write that book. That all was kind of inspired in where I am now. And so I'm going to answer some questions. If you have questions, please add them to the comment section. So the first one, so your travels gave inspiration. What gave you the confidence to share your life to the world? Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to read that again. Your travels gave you inspiration. Yes, it did. What gave you the confidence to share your life to the world? Ooh, I have to say again, it's a combination of doing the inner work with myself. Because like I said, I wasn't always in a position where I felt comfortable. I had to ask for help. I had to ask for help, right? Professionally, from friends, from family, and make the decision to be aware that I needed help to heal for myself, and to work through situations, period. But I think after getting that help and after getting the support and from my friends and from my family, that gave me the confidence, right, to share this work. After doing the work that I needed to do for myself internally, spiritually, doing that work for myself, and just slowly gaining that confidence from the work I did, but then also having that support from my friends and my family. Let me tell you, don't ever take for granted your friends and family. They have seen all sides of me. They have witnessed me go through my struggles and come out of them time and time and time again. And so having that support, oh my God, like I don't know where I would be without them. I really, really don't. So having my friends and my family support really encouraged me to, just really encouraged me to like share my story. And so, yeah, that is the reason. Just doing the work and having the support. And yes, where can I buy the book? So the book is coming out this summer, 2021, most likely in August. I don't have that official date yet, but as soon as I know, you will know. So the book is coming out in summer of 2021, and it will be available on Amazon. I'm self-publishing. So it's going to be available through then. And obviously when that time comes around, I'll put the link in my bio. And you can also just go through my website and click on the link as well. But yeah, it'll be available on Amazon. And I'm also considering publishing it through Ingram Sparks. For those, I don't know if you guys know about that, but Ingram Sparks is another website for authors to publish their work. So I'm thinking about going through them as well, but definitely the main place it's going to be is on Amazon. So thanks for asking that question. Are there any questions? Yes. Would you ever write a book about your own experience and journey as a woman of color? Navigating through a foreign country, or are you focusing on poetry? Ooh, I love that question. The opportunities are endless, right? There's no one direction. Right now I am focusing on poetry. It's still about my experiences, not necessarily through navigating a foreign country, which is crazy that you brought that up because I was also speaking to my editor about this, and she was like, yeah, you should write about, just travel Berlin and just write about those experiences. So I'm definitely thinking about doing that. Now, whether it's going to be in a poetry form or like an actual like book, that is still not certain yet, but stick around and you'll find out. But yeah, no, that's a great question, and there's definitely a lot to talk about being a woman of color in a foreign country, especially in Europe. And so I would love to write about that and share my experiences with that for sure. So yeah, I would be open to writing about that. Yeah, I'm definitely open to writing about that. Are there any other questions? I do also plan on reciting a poem from the book, so stick around. But I do want to take more questions if anyone has a question. These are like some really, really good questions, so give them to me, give it to me. I want another question. Yeah, please ask away. Like this is the time that I want to share with you guys, because I realized, at least in the beginning of me deciding to write this book, I didn't really share that experience. I didn't really share the process, you know? I think we're also all used to having the final product and not being okay with like that process, right? And not being fully done with it. And so originally I was like, I'm just gonna wait until I write this book to share it. But it's like, no, I think there's a part of this that is beautiful, to share the rawness of it, right? To share like when I first start a poem and the inspiration behind that poem. And so I wasn't so keen to sharing at the beginning, but I want to share more of it, and I want to have these discussions. So please, I want to hear from you guys. Ooh, I love this question. Do you have any fears as of now? Hell no. I think you kind of have to be fearless. Yeah, you have to be fearless in this process. I wasn't always. There were times where I was fearful, you know. Not even just about writing the book, but just about in life. Like, can I do this? Am I, deserving of being here? The question is yes, I am. I am worthy, very worthy. We all are. And so there's not necessarily a fear that I have right now in terms of the book. Thanks, my mom is in here, guys. Thanks, mommy. There's not really a fear that I have about writing this book. I think once I made up my mind that I wanted to write this book, and I was committed to it as I am committed to it now, nothing else mattered. Like, that's my goal, I have my job, which I'm grateful for, but then when it comes to my art, if I'm not working, I'm working on my craft, and so that's just my goal. I'm like, I'm writing this book, so let me just do everything I need to do to make sure that this book is done beautifully, authentically, and that I deliver. And so, yeah, I'm not even thinking about a fear. I'm just like, I'm going for it. So that's a good question. Thank you. Are you interested in doing any YouTube web-based videos about your journey? Yeah. So this is the first, right? Like live. I do plan on putting this up on YouTube as well, but I'm calling this a Talk with the Author series. So you will be finding more of these about my process. I might even talk about just like the branding process, like finding people to help you, like when it comes to cover design, editors, like how I went about that, I think I'll definitely talk about that for sure. You just gave me some ideas, Seth, so thanks. Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to do more of this on YouTube, and do a series about just the process of writing a book. And then when I actually write the book, I do plan on doing a book tour and just talking with different, organizations and people about this book when it comes out. So please stay tuned for that. Yeah, I definitely will do that. So that's a great question. How do you push yourself, or get called to write or be creative, even if you really don't want to? Oh, that's such a good one. Okay, that is such a good one. One thing I want to bring up first is, and I might talk about this also, Jasmine Mans, I heard her have also a live about this called The Kitchen Theory. So if you guys don't know Jasmine Mans, please follow her. She just published her book back in March, Black Girl Call Home, which is phenomenal. But she had a series about this, about writer's block. And she called it The Kitchen Theory, which I loved, because it was basically about, she compared writing to creating a cooked meal. And basically, the kitchen theory goes, you're not going to go into a kitchen and go to the stove and a meal appears, right? You're not going to do that. You're going to prepare. You're going to get the ingredients. You're going to decide what you want to eat. And then you're going to prepare the ingredients and cook the food, right? And so it's similar with writing. I think some people have this idea that, if you're writing, not even just with poetry, but just with art in general, like even if you're a painter or musician, that you go up to this canvas, you go up to your book, and you're like, the words are going to just flow out. They're just going to pop out. No. There's many moments that I had where I would just look at a blank page and I'm like, okay, you know what? I need to move away from this. Come back to it later. But yeah, when it comes to the kitchen theory, it's the same way. You don't just go up to a blank page and you're like, okay, the words are going to come out. Like, no, sometimes you have to maybe read something inspirational or watch something inspirational, or the world is full of inspiration, but sometimes you have to sit with it, right? Just like sometimes you have to let the food simmer. You gotta let it simmer. You gotta let the ingredients mix together and get the flavor and let it marinate, right? Before you finally take it off the stove and eat it. And it's the same way with poetry. You don't just write something or you come to your paper and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna write this. Or you think that it's just there, right? Like, oh, the words are just gonna appear and pop up on paper. Like, no, sometimes you have to, maybe you start writing and then you leave it alone. You sleep on it and you come back to it the next day. There's many times where I've written poetry. There's still a lot of poems that I have that aren't fully finished. That's okay. I go back to it when I'm ready. I go back to it when I'm, in the mood to. Sometimes you just have to just stay away from it for a little bit and just let it sit and really think about it first before going and writing. So that's kind of what I've done. I've applied that kitchen theory for sure. And I posted this on my story. Like I said, I heard it from Jasmine Mann. So I want to give credit where credit's due. But yeah, sometimes I might hear a song and I feel inspired by it. And so I listen to that song and I write as I'm listening to that song. One of my poems, To Be Free, that was inspired by Nina Simone. She did a live performance in New York on I Wish I Knew How It was to be free. And that was one of her live performances, and she was so just in tuned. She had an outer body experience. And that, for some reason, that performance inspired me to write this poem, To Be Free. So sometimes I'm inspired by music. Sometimes I'm inspired by other poetry that I, read. Sometimes I just take a walk, or I ride my bike down the street and I get inspiration from that. Sometimes it comes to me in the morning when I'm in the shower and I'm like, ooh, I want to write about this. And so after I get out the shower, I literally write down that topic. Even if it's not that actual poem, it might just be the topic idea, but I come back to it later. So I'm not always inspired to write. Sometimes I need to take a break from it and just sleep on it for a day or two and then come back to it. So it really just depends. But even when I do write a poem, I always think like art is never finished, right? It's never completed. And so sometimes might think I'm done with a poem, and then I leave it alone and I come back to it and I'm like, ooh, I want to add this. And so it really just depends. It depends on the mood. It depends on the day. It depends on the type of inspiration that all kind of contributes to that. So yeah, I would think that when that writer's blocks happens for me, I don't force myself, if it comes out authentically, it comes out authentically. If it doesn't, then I leave it alone and I go back to it later. So yes, that is a great question. Yes. Okay. So what do you do to get inspired? Music, writing, artwork. Yeah. All of it. All of the above. Music, writing, artwork, all of the above. I sometimes even listen to like my classical music. I don't know for any of my classical musicians in here. Max Richter. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Max Richter is a composer, and he writes music for film as well as for piano and things like that. And so I'll just listen to his music. It's so amazing. I don't know, for those that know The Crown, I'm obsessed with The Crown. And one of the songs that was in The Crown, he wrote, if you don't know, it's called Spring. It's inspired by Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and it's called Spring. And there was a scene in The Crown where Princess Margaret was on the back of her husband at the time, his motorcycle, or boyfriend at the time, really. And they were just riding through London, and then this song came up. And that specific song inspired me, So sometimes I'll listen to classical music and get inspiration from that. Sometimes I'll look at a piece of artwork and get inspiration from that. So it just depends, but I get inspiration from all, like even some of the most strangest places you think you wouldn't necessarily get inspiration. I get inspired, like just my surroundings, or a conversation I had with someone, will inspire me, or an experience I had at a grocery store with someone at the counter might inspire me to write something. Or even frustration. Sometimes I channel my frustrations into art. And I actually wrote about a situation where I was frustrated just like where I was specifically when it came to my work. And I was frustrated because it reminded me, that specific frustration or that specific incident that day reminded me of when I was in high school, and I was just kind of going back and forth between what I wanted to do in my career, and then I wrote a poem about that. And so it just really depends, it depends on if I don't even say it depends. I think it's just, I get inspiration from anything, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. It could always be channeled into art, I feel. And so, yeah, inspiration's everywhere. Thank you for the questions. Is there anybody else? I'm loving these questions, by the way. I'm really loving these questions. So if you have any question, those that are tuning in, please stick around. I'm in a minute going to be reciting a poem from my book, which I'm excited. Yes, has your experience living abroad influenced your work? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is kind of to a question that was asked earlier about whether I'm going to write a book specifically on my experiences living abroad, especially as a Black woman. And I'm thinking of doing that, honestly. Now, whether it's poetry related or not, I don't know yet, but I definitely am thinking about writing that book on my experiences here. But yeah, my experiences have inspired me living abroad for sure. Because I'm in a new country. I'm in a new country and moved here during a pandemic, moved by myself. I'm lucky enough to have family here. But that alone is an experience, just moving abroad by yourself, let alone in a pandemic. It's just also reminded me of how far I've come. Like, I'm so proud of myself to be in this position where I'm able to be in this space and just independent and just doing my thing and being in my own space, which I love. I love. So yeah, for sure, it's definitely inspired me. And it's encouraged me as well. It's encouraged me. I think this is the most focused I've ever been. Like, this is the most focused I've ever been, especially when it comes to my art. Like, I'm writing every day. But after this, I'm probably going to write a poem. Like, I'm writing every day. And so being here has really inspired me to, to just, I don't know, just be in my space and own who I am in this space. So yeah, for sure, it's definitely inspired me, with my writing, with everything, for sure. Okay, and last question before I read this poem, and I can't wait. Have you found it challenging being in a new country and trying to write a book, as far as finding an editor, publisher, etc.? That is good. That is good. I would say, in terms of meeting other people, more so when it came to the cover designer, it was challenging for me, especially if I didn't have technology and social media. Because I know tons of people in New Jersey. I mean, because I'm from there, right? So I know tons of people that I can contact that might have connections or are the connection, and here I'm still meeting people, and it's kind of hard right now because Berlin is actually in lockdown. We've been in lockdown since December. So that has been hard. So yeah, for sure, it's definitely been a challenge, finding those people. But like I said, thank God for social media. I actually found my cover designer, who's Berlin based, from a Berlin group that I'm part of on Facebook. And I literally just put up, I'm looking for a cover designer for my upcoming book, blah, 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 blah. And this guy responded to the post, and that's how I found him. And then also Clubhouse is amazing. For those that are on Clubhouse, I'm just letting you know, you need to go on Clubhouse. Because for me, that's more about making actual connections that are meaningful, because you're in these rooms with people and you can hear them speak and you can talk to them. And so I was in this room on Clubhouse about publishing, book publishing, and someone from the audience came up and answered one of my questions that I had about publishing, and come to find out she was an editor. And I contacted her and I was like, hey, I'm looking for an editor, blah, 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 blah. And she responded, she's like, yeah, I edit, da, 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 da. She's had all this experience. She's also another Black woman, hey. Amazing experience with editing. And so I found my editor through Clubhouse. I mean, and to be specific, there was 3 people. 2 other people actually contacted me about editing the book, but I had this conversation with my current editor that was amazing. Like, we just had this connection automatically, and I was like, yeah, I definitely want her to be editing my book. So the question is the answer is like yes and no. Social media has been amazing in being able to connect with people and meet people that, can help me with finding what I need. So yeah, if I didn't have social media, I don't know what. I don't know what I would do. So yes, with that said, I do want to read my poem. This is from the book, and I'm just kind of gonna prop this up because this one I don't have memorized yet, so bear with me. So this poem is called Value, and this was actually inspired by Maya Angelou, and she did a commencement speech at Spelman. I think it was 1986, And there was part of her speech that talked about just valuing yourself as a woman, and knowing who you are, knowing that you have beauty. And so that inspired me to write this poem, because this was a time I wrote this poem that represented a time where I didn't value myself as much, where I didn't feel as confident about myself. I wasn't comfortable in my skin and my body. And so I wrote this piece to kind of represent that time that I was feeling. So here it goes. It's called Value. She does not see her beauty or sit in her body long enough to realize its worth. She thinks her body is something not of holy promises, or knows that it brings honor even in the daytime. Melanin so rich that it complements her features, her skin kissed by the sun. Yes, she is the chosen one. Brown skin, full lips, long legs, wide hips. She looks at her reflection and sees the opposite of divine, because society tells her otherwise and her peers know no kindness. If she maybe sat with her breath, or danced under clouds, or spoke only holy words, or saw her reflection in the water, she would know that she is much more than worthy and would carry a different attitude in her stride. She would know. But the outline of her beauty doesn't show in the concrete, and shadows have no reflection. That is called value. And it will be in my book. And yeah, I'm really excited about this book. And so, like I said, this poem is based on a place that I was, where, like I said, I didn't value myself as much. Thanks, sis. And so just that last part, the outline of her beauty doesn't show in the concrete, and shadows have no reflection. If you think about that, it's almost like she couldn't see her beauty even if she tried to, because it's not being replicated to her, right? Shadows have no reflection. So even if she tried to see it, she couldn't. And so I'm just happy that I'm in a place where I can say that I can see that beauty. I can see that reflection. I can appreciate it now more than ever. And so, yeah, I hope you guys liked it. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And I'll probably, like I said, when I do another series or another video, I will definitely be kind of giving little snippets of it. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for sticking around and for kind of hearing my story and the inspiration behind it. I will be doing this again tomorrow on Facebook Live, same time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time and 6:30 Central Eastern Time. And then for those that are on Clubhouse, I'll be doing that on Monday. I'll be doing a little room on Monday at 6, I think it's the same time. I should know this. At 12:30, same thing, Eastern Standard Time, on Clubhouse on Monday. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again and for sharing more of this process. And I'll be posting this video on Tuesday. Once I finish doing the live and on Clubhouse, I'll be posting this on Tuesday, so you guys get the video and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks guys.